The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Welcome to this special edition of Ukrainian Profile. I am your host, Derick Fage, joined alongside Anna Dombrovska. She is a projects manager of CNEWA Canada, also one of the hosts of Ukrainian Profile that airs right here on Rogers TV. For the next hour, we have a wonderful, wonderful lineup for you, a lot of different perspectives. We have people on the ground in Ukraine that we're going to be bringing in a little bit later on in the show, getting a lot of different perspectives. But we start with the Chargé d'affaires from the Ukrainian embassy here in Canada. I'm joined by Andrii Bukvych. Mr. Bukvych, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Let's talk about the situation in Ukraine right now. How would you describe it?
Well, Russian troops continue simultaneously attack Ukraine from the territory of Russia, Belarus, and temporarily occupied parts of Ukraine, Donetsk, Lugansk region, and Crimea. This is full-scale war launched by Russia against Ukraine, not a conflict in Ukraine, because proper wording is crucial and very important, including with the international organizations. Well, despite significant military advantage, Russia failed to reach its key goals on the first stage of this invasion. Ukraine did not surrender in 3 days as Kremlin planned. No big cities were, the only exception of Kherson, were taken. Ukrainians managed to establish defense and counterattack. No one greets Russia in Ukraine. In towns temporarily under control of Russian troops, Ukrainian population is actively protesting and rallying, holding Ukrainian flags and singing Ukrainian anthem. So having failed to make Ukraine surrender after Blitzkrieg, Russia started searching for fake pretexts to justify its war or aggression. What we see now is the next stage of barbarian war. Having failed to win quickly, Russia opts for unhidden terrorism in its many forms. It's nuclear terrorism, using prohibited weapons such as thermobaric and cluster bombs, false flag operations, including chemical weapons, using civilians as the human shield. So shooting civilians on the streets or while they're trying to escape through previously agreed humanitarian corridors, shelling of maternity and children hospitals, residential areas, cutting of food and medication supplies, power and heat supplies to the besieged cities. So this barbaric war continues.
Mr. Bukvych, as they start moving in, I understand they're moving into some smaller cities as they're trying to get closer to Kiev. What does the military situation look like for Ukraine? Are they being supported enough? Do they have enough to stay strong in those areas? How desperate is that situation?
Well, the major problem for Ukrainian army, if I may say so, is not the forces, Russian forces that are trying to invade us. It's that Ukrainians and Ukrainian army follows the international humanitarian law, following rules of war, and of course, the number one priority to protect and not to damage civilians. That's why the current tactics that Russian troops and tanks are using, they're deploying their forces among residential areas. They're literally taking hostages and they're trying to use this human shield. I've got just a report from Kiev that the mayor of Mariupol has been hostaged, and it's another case of abduction of the mayor of Melitopol, by Russian troops. And this is what happens right now. And of course, under these circumstances, it's much more difficult for Ukrainian soldiers, for Ukrainian army to counterattack. Though I have to admit that because of sophisticated weapons such as military drones, the Javelin and different anti-tank system, Ukrainian militaries are very effective. And the losses that Russia suffered so far in terms of troops, in terms of tanks, helicopters, jets, these losses are enormous. Derick?
Sorry, I was just going to throw it over to my co-host, Anna. Anna, you had a question?
Yes, Mr. Bukvych, how do you think we will survive, Ukraine will survive the next weekend? I know there was an intensifying of shelling in western Ukraine.
Yes, unfortunately, this exactly coincides with the tactics taken by Russia forces. They are gathering from all Russian territories and even far regions Iskander missiles, different rockets. So they're trying to shell airports in different cities, including Western Ukraine. But it seems that Russia, Kremlin, desperately lacks soldiers. That's why they're hiring mercenaries in Syria, for example, or at least rumors say so, intel says so. They're also trying to have this so-called hidden mobilization without official declaration of mobilization for those who previously served in the army. They're trying to find new Russians who will go to war and die from Ukrainian hands. This is what happens, and it seems that despite all these losses, despite the losing advantage they had initially because of the undeclared war and invasion, Russia is now desperate, looking for additional resources to keep on attacking.
Mr. Bukvych, Canada has rolled out some new sanctions. How effective are those sanctions, not only from Canada, but of course the rest of the world that have included their own sanction? The U.S. has rolled out some new. How effective has that been so far?
Well, I would say that if these sanctions, this measure, have been taken before the invasion, we would prevent it from happening. Or if the West would have imposed sanctions of this scale in 2014, we wouldn't have February 24th, 2022. What I see now, Russia, Putin, are not stopping. They're very determined to continue this attack using barbarian tactics, what I mentioned. And it means that immediately sanctions wouldn't have immediate effect on Russian economy, though I believe that in the mid-term, long-term, they will have devastating effect on Russian economy. But unfortunately, they can't stop Putin, they can't stop war, and the toll on Ukrainian people counts to hundreds and thousands of civilians who died from bombing and shelling.
Do you have any confidence whatsoever in a diplomatic resolution here?
Well, of course, President Zelensky publicly said that he's open to negotiations of any format. He is ready to meet with President Putin. You know that in Antalya, Turkey, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Kuleba met with his counterpart, Lavrov. But it seems that while blocking any alternative information to Russian citizens, you may know that Russian government has cut off Russia from Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, other next decisions. They're doing their best to prevent true information coming to gadgets of Russian people. On the other hand, Russian diplomats, Russian establishment is telling blatant lies to Western media, to counterparts. And that's what Foreign Minister Lavrov did in Antalya. So he repeated these ridiculous narratives. First, he said that Russia initiated this war to prevent another war. Now he said that Russia didn't declare this war. Then, when he was asked why Russian jets bombarded maternity house and children's hospital, he said that there was some Azov troops. So, and these lies on unprecedented scale keeps coming from the mouths of Russian officials. You may remember that Russian ambassador Stepanov in Canada, just weeks before this a sneaky declaration of war against Ukraine, was telling Russia would never invade or attack Ukraine. He said it on the record while being on TV news show.
Mr. Bukvych, are you concerned about the silence that that we've seen from countries such as India, Pakistan, South Africa as well has been quite silent? How concerning is that to yourself and to Ukraine?
Well, I think there will be a moment when governments of those countries will finally realize. So this is not a sort of domestic conflict or a conflict just between two countries. This is a very important battlefield. It looks like it could be something like World War III looming on the horizon. So at some point, either NATO countries or G7 countries or any other countries, including India, will have to make a choice whether they are supporting human values, universal human values, or they would rather support dictator in his attempt to threaten the world with nuclear arsenal.
Mr. Bukvych, I really appreciate your time. We know how extremely busy you are. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Derick.
All the best. I'm just going to turn my attention to Anna, my co-host here in studio, because Anna, you hear this and you understand, the humanitarian crisis that's going on right now. When you think about that crisis, as part of CNEWA Canada, how is CNEWA Canada helping support this crisis at the moment?
Thank you, Derick. And yes, humanitarian crisis has been the worst humanitarian catastrophe, so to say, in Europe since the World War II. And definitely all the efforts of CNEWA is now, that is the organization I work with, and we fundraise to support those who are fleeing. So all the efforts are now aimed at getting donations that will go to help the displaced people in Ukraine and those who are fleeing the country outside Ukraine in bordering countries. The people have been very generous. We will send funds within days in the amount of 250,000 to Ukraine, and this is just the first portion. So we have a lot of support, and we believe that this would really make a difference.
Yeah, there's been an incredible amount of support right throughout the country. Right here in Ottawa as well, we had a chance to go down to Ukrainian Hall, which just is down the street actually from Rogers TV, where they were accepting donations. They actually had to close their doors because they had so many donations. And we heard from them. We'll have a look at that, and we'll be back after the break introducing you to some other guests with other perspectives. Have a look.
The response has been so great that we've had to stop accepting early. So, I mean, at the beginning, I thought I was going to continue asking for donations for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, for weeks. But the reality is, we can only take so much. We have to store some of it in Ottawa before we get the green light to send it. Because right now, MIF is only accepting military, first aid, and tactical combat gear. That's what the Ukrainians need. So food, we accepted it, but we got to hold on to it right now. Clothing, we accepted it, but now we have to hold on to it until it's ready to be shipped. So Ottawa came out loud and proud. I guess I never really doubted it. I just didn't know to what extent it was going to occur or how big it was going to be, and it's been exceptional. So I know a lot of people maybe didn't get an opportunity to drop their items off to us, and I'm so sorry for that, and I thank you for everyone who was able to. If you have items, please consider donating locally. Although what's happening in Ukraine is super tragic and hard, and it's a crisis, we also have our own crises here in Ottawa that require attention. And so if you have items, don't let them go to waste. Go give them to shelters, to the mission, to any charity organization that is in need here locally. But if they want to continue helping Ukraine, monetary donations to the Red Cross or the Canada-Ukraine Foundation are where we're pointing people.
This program is brought to you by NHL Center Ice. Follow the teams and players you want to watch no matter where they play. NHL Center Ice is part of the Rogers Super Sports Pack.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
As the fighting continues in Ukraine, thousands of people are fleeing for their lives, forced to leave everything behind. You can help them. Your donation to the Humanitarian Coalition will provide food, water, shelter, and medical care to the people of Ukraine who urgently need it. Call 1-855-461-2154 or donate online today at together.ca. That's together.ca. The Humanitarian Coalition. Together, saving more lives.
On Monday's Daytime Ottawa, we will introduce you to singer-songwriter Nativa. She will tell us about the inspiration behind her brand new single. It's called Higher. We'll also tell you about a brand new book by Stacy Laviolette. If you are having trouble getting your kids to brush your teeth, or perhaps there's some concerns with them going to a dentist, she has a fantastic book. And Amanda Sturzik joins us to tell about her brand new book about chair exercises for our aging population. Welcome back to this special edition of Ukrainian Profile. I am pleased to introduce our next guests, many of them in Ukraine at the very moment. We start with Vladyslav Shelokov. He is a Communication Resource Mobilization Director for Caritas Ukraine. Vladyslav, welcome to the show. Wonderful to have you here. Cassian Soltykevych, he's the National Secretary of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress. Olga Polozka, she's a Kiev resident and the Executive Director of the National Research Foundation of Ukraine. We also have Christopher Curtis, award-winning journalist with the Rover. He is currently in Lviv. Natalka, Patsiurko. She is a member of the Ottawa Ukrainian community, and alongside me in studio, Dombrovska, projects officer with CNEWA Canada, and also host of Ukrainian Profile here on Rogers TV, which is one of our multicultural programs that airs each and every month. I'm going to start with you, Christopher. You made the journey to Ukraine through Poland, and you have seen many of the refugees at that border. Maybe you can describe for us, Christopher, what that experience has been like from that beginning moment when you were at the Polish and Ukrainian border.
Well, I think that you can prepare yourself mentally, for what it's like to see this level of human misery, and there's nothing quite like when it's within reach of you. When you can like see a child and hear a child right there. She's been in the cold for like 30 hours, and she's got a smile on her face, and you can like see that. There are gums where her teeth used to be because she's just a kid. Mm-hmm. And that hits you hard. And to me, we talk about war and we talk about it in tactical terms, but the focus should always be on the human cost of these decisions that we make and the decisions that we don't make. And there's nothing quite so disorienting as seeing that and seeing the line of people and cars and it just lasts for miles and miles and of course this happened in Syria and we shouldn't ignore that, and we should obviously when it happens anywhere it's a problem. It's happening now and it's really hard to see.
In that area where you're at in Lviv, I know I've been following your journey, Christopher, and it sounded like for the most part it was kind of business as usual. People were going to work. You were stopping by and running into people in cafes and pubs. Is it still like that at this very moment?
Well, it's like a surreal mix of people going about their day. But after their jobs, they'll volunteer for the humanitarian effort. Journalists everywhere, military checkpoints everywhere. I had some cops with Kalashnikovs ask to see my camera and my press credentials. That's always a little unsettling. It's martial law, so there are pubs, but you can't buy beer because it's you can't sell any during martial law. There's restrictions on what we can report and photograph. There are cops at the media center watching us report. So it is a society that's been mobilized towards war. And I think the hardest thing to mix is this, like, these 50,000 people who pass through Lviv every day. And there are a lot of children, of the over 2 million people who've crossed the border, half are children. So that is something that you don't forget. That is something that burns itself into your memory. And if you have children, or there's nothing quite like when you hear one of those kids cry, and you just feel dead inside.
Yeah. Olga, I want to come to you because you're in Kiev. I understand that you've left sort of the center of Kiev, and now you're out in the suburbs. But just describe to us what it was like for you in the beginning, and how you've managed to make your way out of sort of that center town area of Kiev.
The office of the National Research Foundation of Ukraine is located in the very center of Kiev. Everyone who has ever been to this wonderful city knows Maidan. This is the central square, so we are located just in the heart of the city. And since the 24th of February, we mostly spent our time in bomb shelters. Sometimes we went upstairs. I personally had to go upstairs to the office to do some things, because the internet connection, phone connection downstairs is very poor. But actually there were days when you went outside and you literally saw nobody in the center. And of course that's also a kind of experience I will never ever forget, because that's a very busy part of the city. So at the beginning, the public transport still worked. Well, it's working now, but with some severe limitations. Living there under those conditions is just, is hell, really.
Yeah.
It's a huge quest even to get some food because all the shops are closed in the vicinity. There was one pharmacy open nearby, and I remember those girls working there, but they literally had no medicines to sell, not even the most primitive ones, though they were open, and I think that's also heroic. But if you move a little bit far from the center, so there, you can see more people there. That's absolutely right, that Ukrainian people have become so consolidated. Everybody helps each other. There are a lot of people volunteering, doing all sorts of things. So, and on the first days after the war started, actually that was very hectic, I would say. Okay. But as time went on, the things started to be more organized. So it's just and the sounds of sirens many times a day, and sounds of explosions, because in Kiev we could hear many of them, sometimes gunshots, but not very often. On some days, predominantly explosions.
Olga, my grandmother, I just talked to her today. She's also in Kiev. She told me that there are huge lineups for the pharmacies to get the medicine, and sometimes the shops are just closed. Is that the case in your area as well?
Yeah, that's just the case. We actually. Again, thanks to volunteers, we now have information, and we can read that in our chats. Which shops and pharmacies are open, which are closed. Actually, it took us about 4 hours to get some food from a supermarket that was not in the downtown area, but just not in the suburbs, in the middle of the city. And it took us 4 hours literally to stand in a line to buy some food. But luckily there was, the choice was quite good. Actually, we managed to buy things. And as a matter of fact, bread. And, I have never been a huge bread lover, but the day when I finally, it was day 5 or something, when I finally managed to buy bread, was just, huge happiness.
Vladyslav, I want to come to you because you're in Ukraine as well. Whereabouts are you in Ukraine, and what's it been like in your area?
Well, now I'm in the Rivne region. It's a Dubno city. It's a small city, almost near the start of Lviv region. Well, but previously, during almost 2 weeks, I was in a village near Makarov city. It's like a really hot spot of this war. Unfortunately, there was a heavy shelling, shootings and bombings of this city. And also I must say that Russian troops, they've even attacked bread bakery factory, small factory in Makarov city, and 15 civilians were killed during this attack. It was last week. So yeah, but and on 25th of February, just the second day when the war started, I left Kiev according to advices of our security manager.
Vladyslav, I know you're involved with Caritas Ukraine, and Caritas Ukraine has been a lifeline for all those displaced people and refugees. Could you tell us what Caritas is doing?
Well, yeah, thank you for this question, because I must admit to our staff and volunteers, they are doing really tremendous work during these days. We have only 3 local organizations of Caritas network in Ukraine temporarily stopped their activities. So it means that the rest, 32, they are very active right now. And they are providing assistance to IDPs, internally displaced people who fled their houses and now need assistance in food, hygiene, and of course of temporary shelter to organize their life outside of their houses.
I'm going to bring it back here to the community of Ottawa, because Natalka joining us, she is a member of the Ukrainian community here in Ottawa. Natalka, what are you hearing from friends and family at this time? And it must be so difficult to be so far away and just watching what's happening.
Yes, it's terrible, because we are having to watch all the news and coverage on Ukraine, but at the same time worry about our family members, friends, and acquaintances that are still back in Ukraine, wondering if they are evacuating from the hottest spots. So in the last days, it's mainly, on the phone trying to track or help people with evacuation of their loved ones, and trying to bring them to Poland and then on to Canada. So today I have the first news of the first trickle of the refugees actually arriving from Ukraine, and we have to organize accommodation for them and such like.
I want to head to Cassian for a moment. He's the National Secretary of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress. And Cassian, we've heard allegations of the possible use of chemical and nuclear weapons. This is, of course, of incredible concern. What are you hearing from your end about the possibility of the use of either nuclear or chemical weapons?
I think nuclear weapons are, of course, a very big scare for the whole world. I don't, we've heard other governments say that it's unlikely for them to be used, but chemical weapons that have been used in other places by the Russian regime is a very, very scary thing to think about, and it is a potential that it could happen. It's also very scary just to see that Russia will twist these, any weapons that they use that are against the Geneva Convention. They do not care about that. They will keep on using whatever methods they wish, and they will try to frame it that these are the Ukrainians who are doing it. They have put out false messages that that there is ammonia in Kharkiv, that there is a big storage facility there, that there are bioweapons being developed in Ukraine with the backing of the United States. They're all these false information, just like we've seen today about Russian jets flying into Ukrainian airspace and attacking Belarus to stage a false flag operation that Ukraine is attacking Belarus. So we will continue to see that happening, but we need to call Russia out on that and make the world being aware that these are not, Ukraine does not, use any of these illegal weapons. They do not want these things to be done. They're a peaceful and loving country, but they are fighting back against Russia and Putin's regime and the terrible things that he wants to use against innocent civilians.
Yeah, Cassian, there's a lot of disinformation. You and I spoke about this last week, the amount of disinformation that's coming out. That they've been a lot of companies are pulling out. Of course, you also brought up the fact that Facebook was closed down in Russia. This type of disinformation is incredibly dangerous. For people watching at home. Just speak on the importance, first of all, of getting your information from reliable sources, because social media isn't necessarily the place you should be going to get your information.
Absolutely. Well, it's relatively straightforward to understand what's reliable and what's not. If you think something's too good to be true or too fake to be true, Google it and see if other reputable media organizations around the world, not necessarily in the Canadian or United States based media are reporting that, but look at what others are reporting. If it's true and if it's reputable, it'll be reported in multiple agencies, and just do the research yourself and think about how reliable the source is. Whether it's in Canada we have the National Post, CBC, CTV Global, and if you go look internationally the BBC, Al Jazeera, CNN. You look at any of these reputable organizations and media outlets, you can follow them. In Ukraine especially, they're excellent independent media sources, especially the Kiev Independent. Follow them and they'll be the ones who will be sharing reliable information that's on the ground. We just remember we're at a time of war that things can change very, very quickly, especially, for example, when we hear about the downing of any aircraft or things like that. We have to be aware of we can't really know it until we have photographic confirmation and it has been verified. So be aware of any claims that are come out very quickly. It's just breaking news. Give it some time. Make sure that it's verified and double check your sources and make sure that several agencies have been reporting it reputably.
I want to go over to Christopher Curtis, a journalist at the Rover. And Christopher, you're on social media. I know you've taken some breaks just for your own mental health, being there in Ukraine and in Lviv. When it comes to, following things on social media, have you seen, and even being there, Christopher, talking to people, is some of that disinformation trickling into the population of Ukraine? Are they hearing some of this disinformation?
There's a lot to parse, and things are changing quickly. Sometimes you'll even see the government numbers come out, or 12,000 Russians killed, or that seems like a very high number, considering the sort of war it is. So I think it's less a focus on sort of numbers and figures and more like, okay, well, what's being attacked? What's the focus? And I haven't really done too much social media because you want to talk to the people who were there. And refugees describe war crimes, being shot at. Everywhere you go in Lviv, you see these cars with not the Ukrainian Cyrillic, but the Russian Cyrillic word for children taped onto it. And right. And that's rather chilling. The idea that you would have to put that on there and maybe that'll save you from coming under fire. What's kind of crazy for my Canadian mind is seeing there's so much propaganda and government propaganda, like a poster that's basically for recruiting in the military and that sort of stuff. And I had never seen that before. So, we do it in Canada too, and we do it in the United States as well. It's a little more subtle, but my worry is that because you see Russia and you see how much, what killed me was I would talk to these refugees and they tell me their relatives in Russia don't believe they're being bombed or they don't care because they think right. that ultimately this is good. But then you turn around and you see a bunch of propaganda, woman with a gun in Vladimir Putin's mouth, Russian soldiers, you're not coming on our soil, you'll go into our soil. I'm just worried that, what happens after the war. I don't want to see this thing where they, I don't want to see the hatred escalate. I'm not saying that's what is going to happen in Ukraine or with Ukrainians. I'm just always kind of weary of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
If I can just,
Derick, please, Cassian,
to jump into this, I think it's absolutely a good point. I think, as you're mentioning about the the posters and things like that, I think really the energy is, and people are very well aware, is not against the Russian people, it's against the Russian regime and the Russian military. This is, since the Second World War, this is a war. This is not a slight invasion. This is not a someone crossing over the border slightly. This is bombing of humans and children, and they have full right to be angry and to empower their people, to empower their citizens to stand up and fight, because they are really defending the free world, democracy, and the rule of law for everyone. They're fighting for all of European peace and security, and they're doing it every single day, and they need to have that energy and the willpower, whatever it is, so that they can overcome an enemy that's invaded a sovereign European nation. So I understand that sentiment there, but I think it's directed against the Russian military. And like you said, people do have friends and family in Russia, and they know one another, but Ukrainians are rising up and going, we're standing up for our country and standing up for the world here.
And we're going to sorry, go ahead, Christopher. Finish your thought. No, go ahead.
No, all I would say is that, there aren't the niceties of propaganda in the West, where like there's a lot of subtle messaging. You don't see it. It's very direct. I'm just saying it's jarring. I haven't, and I always worry, what's next? I try to take the long view of it, but I'm certainly not saying I'm in a position to say what's right or wrong here. I'm just sort of saying what I've seen.
Right. We're going to take a quick break. Our guests are going to stick with us here. You are watching a special edition of Ukrainian Profile here on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Hi, I'm Barbara Balfour, host of Ottawa Experts. No decision will have a greater impact on your life than who you choose to share it with. So how do you choose the right person, and how can you be a good partner for years to come? Join us Wednesday at 8 p.m. for a discussion on lasting relationships with marriage experts Dr. Gail Crowder and husband and wife team John David Mann and Anna Gabriel Mann. See you then.
Hi, I'm Harriet Clooney. Come check out my show, Scrap Cooking, where I'm going to show you how to use the bits and bobs, the ends, pieces of things that you might otherwise throw in the compost. I'm going to show you how to turn them into something delicious.
Ottawa's local shops, restaurants, and services are woven into the fabric of our city. We can all help them during these challenging times. Order from them online, purchase gift certificates to use later, order meals for takeout or delivery, send them messages of support on social media. Please do it today. Learn how at ottawa.ca/buylocal.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Welcome back to this special edition of Ukrainian Profile. Olga Polozka is not only in Kiev, she's also the executive director of the National Research Foundation of Ukraine. And I wanted to talk about your work, Olga, because it's my understanding that sort of grant money was coming towards the Research Foundation, and you as an organization were really prepared to start doing some very important research, and obviously that stopped quite abruptly. What has happened to the Research Foundation and the staff that was with you at that time?
Well, as far as the staff goes, it's about 60 people here. Quite a new foundation and started operating in 2020. Actually, they're all scattered about the country, and some of them have already left Ukraine because they have young kids. Well, actually, every morning we have a chat, and every morning I start with the question, is everyone alive? So, well, you can understand the condition. Well, as far as the foundation goes, you are absolutely right. We were preparing, and actually on the 1st of March, we were scheduled to start financing about 200 research projects that became winners of competitions of our calls in 2020 and 2021. And this never happened. So far, we are not providing any financial support to the top research projects in Ukraine. So we stopped operating as such, which is, of course, just, well, a tremendous throwback. Well, 2 more calls were running. We were expecting to get the final results of the calls in early April, but again, that's evidently being delayed. And as far as research goes, well, I have heard so much disinformation, and one of the latest is that some kind of biological weapons is being developed in Ukraine. I can tell you just, because I'm a person who knows and I'm a professional. In Ukraine, we don't have any laboratory which has the proper biosafety level, even to do research connected with coronavirus. That was, by the way, a huge problem with one of our projects, because physically they could not perform their part of their research, because there is no a single laboratory in Ukraine that has this biosafety level 3, or not to say of level 4. So it's just like that. So we are just, everything has stopped in Ukraine, or almost everything. And as far as research goes, some of research institutions are still operating in the western part of Ukraine, but their operation is limited. So what they're doing mainly is the experiments which cannot be interrupted. And if we talk about central and eastern Ukraine, well, for example, Kharkiv, you must have heard about the second largest city in Ukraine, which is a capital, has always been an intellectual capital of Ukraine since a lot of educational establishments and research institutions are located there, and several of them have been physically destroyed. And which is very alarming is that one of them is the institute of one of physical research institutes that works with some nuclear research, but this is just, peaceful nuclear research for just the demands of nuclear energetics in Ukraine. And there is a huge system, the so-called neutron source system, and it has also been destroyed in Kharkiv. So it looks like that. We're thrown back tremendously, and this is a huge problem. And the outcome of this problem is to come a little bit later. I'm sure that we don't even realize the range of this type of catastrophe, in the research sphere too. And thank you for the question.
You're welcome.
Olga, since we were talking about grants, the growing concern here in Canada that I hear every day at my work is it safe to transfer funds to Ukraine? We do a lot of fundraising, and is there any plan B in your organization, how the funds will be safe in case the situation gets worse?
Well, I'm very sorry, but just it seems to me you misunderstand what the foundation does. We don't operate any kind of money but the government money.
Right,
so, we are a foundation which is a budget foundation, and so, the money is absolutely safe. If you're talking about different volunteering organizations, it's just like anything. I personally haven't heard about any cases of money or some supplies that come to Ukraine disappearing. But, again, it's to the best of my knowledge.
Well, Olga, you know what?
Olga,
sorry to interrupt. Maybe this is a good question for Vladyslav, because you are with an organization that is offering support. Maybe you could better answer that question for us.
Well, the question was regarding the resources that we want to collect, or what?
Just the concern about money and you know that it's getting to the right people, it's going to the proper people. There's always that concern when people are donating, especially from other countries, right?
And not only that, what I hear from the donors is that they're afraid. I do not want to talk about this scenario, but they're afraid that Ukraine will not soon may stop existing as a state. We all hope for the victory and peace. But people here are concerned. I hear more and more from Canadians that the funds that they donate will be in the hands of Russia. So that's the concern. So I just wanted to understand if there are so many donations going to Ukraine that it is safe to donate and the funds will not be seized by the occupants.
Well, first of all, you donate if you donate to Caritas Ukraine, the money will be on the bank account of Caritas Ukraine, and we will deliver this assistance to vulnerable categories of people, to our beneficiaries, as soon as we can. And if in this case we should divide, I guess, your question into two parts. The first part is to bring immediate relief. Well, we are now receiving funds, and we are purchasing food parcels, hygiene kits, clothes, and so on, and we distribute it among needed people. And the second phase of your question might be if we're talking about long-lasting infrastructural projects, but these projects can only be started only after the war will finish. And I believe, I'm a patriot. I believe in in Ukrainian army. I believe that Ukraine will win this war because we won't started it. We didn't start this war, but at the same time, we understand that we live on our land, on our homeland, and we will fight for our territory and for our cities and our villages. And also, I was just wanted to mention that now we are facing a really tremendous humanitarian crisis. As Joanna said, that in analogy was only in previous century during World War II. But now, why do we face such a challenge? Because Russian military troops, they are attacking civilian objects, and people are fleeing from their hometowns because they are afraid for their lives, because they see that military troops, they attack civilians and kill civilians. So that is why they are trying to find safer place in western part of Ukraine, and more than 2 million people, they have already found this more safer place outside of Ukraine, in Poland, in Slovakia, in Hungary, and other countries of Europe. Not Russia and Belarus, but Europe. So
Vladyslav, I want to go to Cassian just for a moment on that, because Cassian, as you said, over 2 million now Ukrainians fleeing the country. When do you start? I mean, obviously some are going to come here to Canada. When might we see Ukrainians being able to come to Canada? Have some already touched down here in Canada?
Well, so we're aware that that in the next coming days, the federal government is going to open up a special application for Ukrainians who want to come to Canada on a temporary stay visa. Those who already had visas and have crossed the border are able to come to Canada already. Most of those would be people who already have family and friends in Canada. There might be already some cases, but it would be a small amount. For the larger volume of people, though, we're expecting that in the coming weeks towards the end of the month. If I can just jump back, though, to the previous question about the donations, I think Canadians should all feel very safe and secure donating to Canadian organizations that do work in Ukraine, especially, and to donate to the National Bank of Ukraine. The National Bank of Ukraine is using money every single day to support the military and support their troops. If you donate to the Canada-Ukraine Foundation, as an example, it's a Canadian registered charity. they are not giving their money to one organization, but to many. And it's an immediate need. There's no point, and no organization in Canada that's doing work in Ukraine is holding on to any money. It's being spent right away on humanitarian needs. As was just being mentioned, by Caritas Ukraine, it's an immediate need. Civilians are being killed, their homes are being destroyed, so it's buying shelter, it's buying food, it's buying sleeping bags, it's whatever is in immediate need now. There's no funding is being held back to think about roads being rebuilt or bridges being rebuilt. That's a question for after Ukraine. After Ukraine wins this war. Ukraine is not going to lose. Ukraine is for sure going to win, because there is no doubt in my mind, because the people of Ukraine, everyone from someone who's 1 year old to 100 years old, in their heart knows that they are fighting for democracy and freedom, and they don't want this tyrannical government to take over their land.
Natalka, I see you nodding and in agreement to many of these statements that are just being made, and I'd like to go back to you. And just coming back to Ottawa and the type of support that you've seen, and I don't even just mean monetary support and supplies. It's really Ukrainians here in Canada and in Ottawa supporting each other. What has that been like in the types of conversations you're having?
Well, it's essential in the times of war to have the conversation between ourselves and support each other. This is really, really, really important. We came to this idea of having a daily hug, ceremony, because after the day of dealing with these issues and with trying to make sure that our loved ones are secure, we need some comfort to ourselves. And also, I have to admit that we are very touched by the support of other Canadians and other Canadians of Eastern European background, right? Who are showing their support to us, and it's really palpable. We're really happy to have this, right? And I can also add to the question on the refugees that are coming, right? So as I said earlier, we already seen people who have touched down in Canada in the last days, right? Okay. And I think many more. So the largest groups of Ukrainians are now waiting for this emergency visas in Poland, right? So I think we would start seeing the more substantial numbers of refugees coming in about 2 to 3 weeks, right? Because people need to go through the process and get the visa, and it's a little bit hard because there are long lines up. And, people are waiting and trying to kind of survive in the meantime. So.
As we were talking about Ukrainian community in Ottawa, and we are a local TV station, Ukrainian Profile is a local program, I wanted to ask Cassian about the rallies that have been organized these days. Is there any coming up this weekend?
Yes, there's one this Sunday at 2 o'clock at City Hall. It was City Hall. We've had a few over the past few weeks. Really excellent turnout. Lots of people coming out and showing their support. And as was being mentioned, other communities especially coming out to show their support. So, communities from the Baltic states, from Polish, from the Belarusian community who are against Lukashenko, and many others, including the Taiwanese community as well, and the Hungarian community. So all these communities coming out and showing their support because they are, they're the next border over from Ukraine, and they know they lived under Soviet rule, and they know what that's like, and they do not want to go back to that by any means. So they know what it's like. They're supporting Ukrainians, and they stand by Ukrainians and their fight for freedom and democracy. So we're really happy to see that. But we invite everyone who wants to come out this weekend, especially. We will include part of the program will be thanking Ottawa and the people of Ottawa for what they've done so far and what they'll continue to do, and how we can encourage everyone living in Ottawa, both Ukrainian and non-Ukrainian alike, what they can do moving forward. In the coming weeks, because it's going to be a long road after Ukraine defeats this Russian military.
Cassian, maybe you don't have the answer to this, and I think it's difficult to gauge it, of course, because we don't necessarily have much access to Russia. But what do you think about support from everyday Russians? Do you think it is split? Like, what kind of percentage would we be looking at of everyday Russians supporting this unlawful, unjust invasion of Ukraine?
Well, every Russian citizen who stands up against the tyrannical regime of Vladimir Putin is a hero in my mind.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to do. Not everyone in Russia, supports supports the people of Ukraine. Many of them don't even know what's happening. The media is very, very strongly controlled. We've been, as a Ukrainian community, been calling for Russian state media to be barred from our airways for years, and this is the product of it. After years of saying we shouldn't have this, some groups have already acted on it, but it's not something that happens overnight. People are not accustomed to following the same newscast, in 1 or 2 days. It's a years-long process that people are subjected to, and then all of a sudden they think horrible things about the Ukrainian president, anti-Semitic things about the Ukrainian president, despite the fact that he's Jewish. These horrible things that have been repeated time and time again over the last many years, and that's what's these false narratives that then lead to where we are today. And it's very hard to unwind that. It's not the extreme of North Korea, but it's this brainwashing of putting out this false information for years and decades, and that's what you're left with. And it's very hard. It's easy for us to say, well, why don't Russians just all stand up? And many do, and many are protesting against this war, but many are not, and many think that this is a just war, that it's the correct thing that Vladimir Putin should be doing. But we hope that changes. We hope that changes, and we hope that see their sanctions hurting their economy and hurting them individually, and going, I can't get a Big Mac anymore. I can't buy Coca-Cola. I can't go to the south of France for vacation. I can't go here. I can't do this. And my money's worthless. So we want to see that, that's something that happens overnight again, that pain, but that will happen over the coming weeks, absolutely.
Vladyslav, where you're at, I imagine obviously supply has been cut off for many different things. Have you had anything, electricity, water supplies cut off in the region? Like how difficult is it in your area at the moment?
Well, electricity and water supply in my region, where I'm right now, everything is okay. You can see that there is a light, there's electricity, there's water supply, everything's okay. But if we're talking about the cities which faced Russian aggression directly, I mean this Kharkiv, Sumy, Volnovakha, Mariupol, the situation there, if we're talking about Mariupol is surrounded by Russian military forces, and it's almost 12 days of blockade. And I must say that today I wrote a very tragical message from Mariupol City Council, that they said that during these 12 days, 1,582 civilians have been killed. That's really a tragedy, because you can a few days ago, the day before yesterday, maybe you saw these photos after airstrike on maternity hospital in Mariupol. This picture, it's unbelievable that in 21st century we see such pictures from the central part of Europe, and the world doesn't scream about it, because it's not just it's not just the not right thing. It's horrible thing.
Absolutely.
It's not a war. It's a genocide.
Well, and we saw, I think the number now is 26 attacks on healthcare facilities. So that shows you to the degree that Putin is willing to go. Vladyslav, thank you so much for joining us. Cassian, Olga, Natalka, really appreciate your time today. I wish you, all of us from Rogers TV here and all of the people in Ottawa, we wish you the best. And we thank you for joining us and spending time with us today. And I'll turn my attention to you, Anna. I mean, last thoughts, reaching out to the Ottawa community, what would you like to say to them?
Thank you very much for staying with Ukrainian Profile. Дивіться нас далі. І вперед до перемоги. We are waiting for the victory and peace.
And I really appreciate it. Again, thanks to all of our guests, and thanks to those of you watching here on Rogers TV and those of you that have been listening on City News Ottawa. We appreciate you spending time, and don't forget, if you do have the means to donate, thanks for watching.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.